Hello everyone. Tonight we will talk about the secret art of Tumo, practiced by the monks of Tibet, those legendary masters of the internal flame who can sit naked in the high snows as if winter were a choice rather than a condition. Imagine being practically naked at freezing altitudes and being capable of drying numerous wet sheets over the course of a single night using only your body heat. Only Tibet can give us these stories. So, before you get comfortable by your heater, take a moment to like the video and please subscribe to the channel. I'm new here on YouTube, so every new subscriber is a victory for me. I would also love to know more about you. Please leave a comment telling me where in the world you are watching this from and what time it is for you right now. If you have any topic suggestions, I would appreciate it very much as well. Act 1. The opening ritual. The luxury of fire versus the power of the skin. Listen. Sit. Do one simple thing with me. Silence. Breathe. Notice the temperature of your room. Without moving your eyes, let your attention rest on the skin where it meets cloth. The place where the world touches you, the nap of a sleeve, the hush of a radiator. There is a number on a wall somewhere that decides whether you call this room warm. A small lever, a polite machine. It is a miracle, and it is a dependency. It is said that the first miracle we surrender is cold. We trade the negotiation with weather for a single dial. This is useful. It is also a small forgetting. Imagine now the sky peeled open to its pale iron. Imagine midnight on a lake that could break like glass beneath a foot. Men sit on that ice, naked to the waist, silent as stones. No electric hum, no camping stove, no wool that lies between them and the world. This is not a theatrical exaggeration. Witnesses exist. It is written in the notebooks of travelers who left salons and trains and learned how to count breath as if it were a ledger. One such traveler sits between languages and mountains, Alexandra David-Néel, appearing like a question. She is both witness and pilgrim. She went into caves buried in snow to find a warm secret. She wrote, "It is said that Tumo is a heat, more will than chemistry." She wrote what she could. This is not all. Only a few learn the full story. Breathe with me now. Slowly. Long. Allow the inhalation to come as if it were a small bell swelling in the belly. Exhale with a slow narrowing of the lips. Keep the shoulders soft. Let the spine lengthen. We begin. Act 2. The concession. Anchor. Opening the door. There is a door you do not open alone. The first act in the living tradition of Tumo is ankur, concession, empowerment. It is said that power without permission breaks like thin glass. The anchor is not stage magic. It is a protocol, vows, a shared map, and the sealing of a rule that binds the student to the method and to a teacher. The master and the student sit across from one another in a room, warmed by little more than a candle. A sutra might be read aloud in a cadence that seems to pull the air in circles. The student takes vows to hold certain intentions, to sleep at set hours, to censor desires that scatter wind. A wrist is bound with a thread, a small, visible token. A syllable is given, a mantra or seed letter, not as sound alone, but as a living shape in the mind. The student repeats it until repetition becomes a nervous habit, a contour cut into attention. The concession is a transfer of responsibility. The teacher places a hand in the student's life and says, I will hold you accountable. It is a method of naming the body as a field that can be rearranged. Saying the seed syllable aloud or shaping it within is a way of marking territory inside the nervous system. The teacher's vow is a frame that keeps the mind honest. The student's vow is a consent to be seen. This is not written about in public scrolls in full because the anchor alters a nervous system. The lineage is careful. It is said that without proper framing, one can wander into states the system is not prepared for. Only a few learn anchor in a way that protects both mind and community. The secret, therefore, is ethical, a discipline that guards what the practice changes. Act 3. The cartography of wind, titsas, channels, and the three currents. Listen. There are channels in the body that are not veins, not nerves, as an anatomist would name them. They are chas, conduits of attention, of tiny currents the tradition calls wind, rurlung. This is not pseudoscience. It is a vocabulary for habitual flows of sensation and response that have architecture. It is said, the maps are made for minds, not for knives. Practitioners trace these channels with their hands and eyes at first. They learn how the breath collects at the abdomen when startled, how shame sits in the throat, how grief finds the lungs a harbour. The teacher points, here the right current, Roma hot, active, solar. Here the left, Kaing cool, receptive, lunar. Between them, the central axis, Uma, the path that will be taught to host the fire. They sit with attention like a lamp, moving it inch by inch through imagined corridors until the body's interior becomes navigable by memory. The three channels are a map of polarity, action and repose, day and night, the blade and the sheath. They are moral instruments. When winds scatter, life scatters. To place wind in Uma is to ask the self to become an instrument of continuity, not a chorus of unpredictable impulses. The map is also an amulet. By naming inner paths, the mind remembers it can return. The positions of these channels are not spoken of in marketplaces, because they can be misused as metaphors of dominion, a way to claim control over others as if they were inner winds. It is said that when a person tries to force winds into channels without the vessel of practice, vows, pacing, guidance, the system resists. Only a few learn the delicate art of coaxing without breaking. The secrecy preserves bodies. Silence. Act 4. The seed syllable and the lotus, ram, the golden bloom, David-Néel Yorma. Every fire requires a seed. Here it is a syllable and a symbol. The seed syllable ram is not merely spoken, it is imprinted, in the mind as if pressed there, in the posture as if the breath were its echo. The practitioner shapes lips, rests the tongue at the palate, softens the jaw, and places awareness at the navel, where a golden lotus is seen or intuited. Around the lotus stands David-Néel Yorma, in iconography a dakini, in practice a posture in the mind, fierce and maternal, empty and exact. The syllable is not drawn as ink on an inner wall, but known as a living seed. It is said that syllables have motive force. They stand upright. They push. The lotus is not decoration. It is a metaphor and a working device. A lotus opens and dies, and opens again, a cyclic image that echoes every breath. Dorji Nalyoma is the principle that refuses to be flattered by weather. Her stance is a rebuke to panic. The syllable is a lever for attention, a small machine that can tilt the body's interior climate. The syllable is a code. It rearranges the nervous response to breath and image. The lineage keeps it within vowels because the syllable can be misapplied into the theatre of fantasy rather than into the laboratory of attention. Only a few learn how to use words as precision tools. It is said that in distant schools, the correct pronunciation of such seeds can kindle. Others say the sound is secondary, the image burns. I have heard both. I know enough to say, do not play with matches near dry grass. Breathe. Act 5. The 10 stations. The engineering of inner combustion. This is not mere storytelling. It is engineering in a human vessel. 10 stations, a series where breath, posture, image, and restraint rearrange chemistry and attention. They do not occur with hard edges. They blend as waves do. Even so, the elders mark them as waypoints, so the mind knows where it might be. 1. Thread of ember in Uma. The belly narrows. Attention rests as a point at the navel. The syllable pulses, not loudly, but like a distant drum under snow. The tiny candle, the ignition of intention. A vow of beginning firm enough to withstand boredom. Why secret? Beginners turn sparks into bonfires and call it progress. The instruction here is minimal and precise, and that precision is guarded. 2. Flicker and focus. The spark steadies. The breath slows further. The muscles near the spine quietly join the scene, but nothing theatrical is permitted. The fingers flame, a small thing protected by cupped palms. The promise that sustained attention warms. Why secret? Distraction wears the mask of achievement. Those who do not know the mask might crown it. 3. Lamp in the belly. The abdomen becomes a lamp. Peripheral fingers warm. The breath is metered not for spectacle, for steadiness. The butter lamp an offering made inside the body, not a light for others to see by, a light to see oneself. Why secret? Warmth intoxicates and flatters the ego. Without an elder's cool eye, triumph appears early. 4. Torch in Uma. The central channel extends into a column of sensation. Vase-like breath arises as an art rather than a trick. A pillar of fire binding disparate rooms of the house into one home. Why secret? This is where autonomic tuning deepens. Pushing here can scatter winds into side paths. The elders protect students from their beautiful impatience. Breathe. 5. Spilling into Roma and Kyangma. Heat migrates away from the core. The skin's map brightens in slowly widening circles. Symbolic meaning. Tributaries, catching flame from the main river. The balancing of sunlight and moonlight in the same body. Why secret? Side currents do not like coercion. Forcing turns rivers into scars. 6. The 4 lamps. The flame lights the navel, the heart, the throat, the crown. They do not ignite at once. They keep time. A circuit of light, a quartet that tunes the house's rooms to one chord. Why secret? Here the threshold of bliss and disruption sits. Only careful pacing keeps the mind honest and the heart unbroken. 7. Ocean in the body. Heat is not local but global. The boundaries between shoulder and rib cage, thigh and calf blur into a shimmering field. The sea of warmth that contains storms without becoming them. Why secret? Globalization of state without integration fractures identity. The elders mend before they enlarge. 8. The bellows of mind. Breath gives way to seeing. Visualization leads physiology like a shepherd's hand on a flock that trusts. The mind as bellows, but a bellows that quiets even as it feeds. Why secret? A mind that can conjure physiology can be misused for spectacle, for power. Guardrails of vow are required. 9. World as fuel. The environment becomes instrument. The sting of air on a cheek is not an insult, it is tinder. The cold is no longer an enemy, but a partner in an old dance. The joining of opposition, learning to read weather as a text that speaks back. Why secret? Here the boundary between skill and show blurs. Elders hide these lessons from crowds. 10. The great void. The body's heat and the mind's clarity meet, and then the edges dissolve. The lamp is not extinguished. The room is discovered borderless. Clear light. The end of the need to be warm. Why secret? The great void is not a trophy. It is said that those who return carry fewer words and more silence. Only a few learn how to return intact and speak gently of what cannot be spoken. There is a reversal too, not always told outside the room, from vastness back to hair-thin thread, from ocean to lamp to spark to stillness. The fire collapses upon itself without smoke. Then the breath is ordinary again, and a small coal remains. This return is also a training. Without it, one can be lost in vastness. Act 6. The body as laboratory. Biology, chemistry, and the sovereignty of heat. There are two ways to speak of Tumo, as myth and as measurable physiology. They are not opposed. They overlap like two plates of glass. Scratch one and you will see both reflections. Visible practice. Techniques exist that modulate carbon dioxide and oxygen rhythms, that engage deep musculature of the abdomen and pelvic floor, that condition the peripheral vascular bed to dilate in response to image and breath. Practitioners pace arousal and calm in careful intervals, not to impress the world, but to instruct the endocrine chorus, cortisol, catecholamines, the quiet chemistry that accompanies resolve. They repeat in the same place, in the same posture, at the same hour, until the body learns cyclical obedience. The body is an old, stubborn engineer. The practice asks it to be both instrument and witness. Each breath becomes an instruction to the immune system, to the autonomic balance, to the maps of threat and safety etched into muscle and fascia. It is also a spiritual memory drill. To remember warmth inside is to remember that impermanence need not be panic. Why it is kept secret? Because the art marries physiology and belief. Both can be damaged. Because partial recipes without vows become stunts. Only a few learn the art as a grammar, not a trick. Silence. Act 7. The trials. Rishunkpa, wet sheets, and the ethics of proof. Stories remain. They are not proof, nor are they mere fiction. They are instruction, lined with warning. The tale of Reshungpa. It is said that this beloved disciple, ambitious, brilliant, left his master Milarepa against his master's cautions, seeking scholarship in Lhasa. A wealthy patron bound him with generosity and a daughter, a marriage allowed then but not later after Tsongkhapa's reforms. The daughter did not admire him. The household became a kiln of humiliation. One day, the story says, she cut him with a knife, and from the wound there flowed not blood, but semen. One Lama told me this, absolutely convinced. Through the fire of Tumo, his body filled with generative essence. Another laughed softly. Do not mistake symbol for flesh. Yes, they said, you can suffuse the body with creative power, but it is subtle, shugs, not coarse substance. I tell it not to settle it, only to show how teachings fold into fable to guard something that resists display. The wet sheet test. An icy night. A riverbank. If the river is frozen, an opening is cut. The wind is chosen. The moon is chosen. Nights of freezing clarity invite this rite. Men sit on the ground, cross-legged and naked. Sheets are dipped in the ice water and draped across shoulders. They steam. When one dries, another is placed. This repeats, sometimes until dawn chips the horizon. It is said a winner dries 40. I cannot confirm the number. I have seen a good many pieces the size of shawls. The rule of old was 3, to earn the white cotton skirt, the badge of a respa. The rule is not always kept. Visible practice. The student is exposed. The technique is timed. Thermometers appear in modern retellings. The drying of cloth is a sign both simple and hard to counterfeit. A spectacle of trust. The skin, once a limit, becomes a liturgy of sovereignty. The community witnesses not a circus, but the keeping of a vow. Why it is kept secret? Because a test can seduce. When a practice becomes something to win, it begins to rot. Elders hide contests to protect novices from the market of marvels. There are stories of fraud as warning and compassion. Men who trained, who earned cotton, then, lacking persistence, wore wool under their cotton tunic. Not every statue holds gold, some are gilded clay. This too is human. At the other extreme, those who throw away even cotton, living naked in high ranges near Kangtise, Mount Kailas, for years. Pride and misunderstanding swirl around them. A Tibetan hermit once laughed at an Indian sadhu on the plains, saying, "Old friend, tried so Mapam's shore for a season." He laughed, then he kept walking. Warning, the abrupt break. In the old tongue there is a phrase for winds that spill, for pressure used without a vessel, for euphoria mistaken for attainment. It is said one can be killed by the power of the mind, killed by one's own imagination. I have heard this from Bonpo lips and Buddhist lips both. Even modern words, suggestion, auto-suggestion, are thin clothing for older fears. The warning remains. Push without guidance, and dizziness, arrhythmia, fainting, and fracture of mind are not miracles, they are consequences. Respect the caution. Only a few learn to step this threshold safely. Silence. Act 8. Practices for the curious, not the reckless. This is orientation, not initiation. Only a few receive ankur. If you do not have a teacher, Treat these suggestions like the edge of a cliff. They show you the terrain. They do not teach climbing. Do not attempt austerities or cold exposure, alone or beyond your capacity. Consult physicians for medical concerns. What follows sketches the mood of practice, not its method. Posture. Sit as if a string lifts the crown, pelvis slightly forward, knees supported, neck soft. Gaze. Soft, half-lidded, or closed. Breath. Let the lower belly receive the inhale gently. Do not force. Allow the exhale to lengthen slightly without strain. Visualization. If you are so inclined, imagine a small coal at the navel. No theatrics, just a point of quiet attention. Duration. Short. A few minutes. End by letting breath become ordinary. Sit quietly afterward. Safety. If dizziness, tingling, chest discomfort or agitation appears, stop and return to ordinary breathing. Never practice near hazards. Do not mix intense breath work with untreated health conditions or unadvised cold exposure. Symbolic meaning. These fragments are lanterns at a doorway. They illuminate the existence of a path without inviting you to run into the dark. Why these are partial? The full technique is relational, teacher, place, vow, pacing. This is not written about in full because publication is not transmission. Only a few learn because only a few are ready to be changed by what they learn. Act 9, memory as practice, cyclic time, and isolation as preservation. Tibetans think in cycles. The mnemonic of a ritual repeats across seasons. Memory is cultivated as practice as much as posture. The monastery keeps knowledge by repeating small acts every day, so that what is learned exists not as novelty, but as a groove. Visible practice. Repetition. A hand that presses the same bead on the mala, a page read until ink and breath become siblings. The same bench at the same hour, the same window light arriving like a metronome across winter. Symbolic meaning. Cyclic time is an ethic. Each winter you return to the same test, the same wall, the same window. Impermanence is the teacher. Each warm moment passes, each cold returns. To practice Tumo is to accept this and convert acceptance into skill, not into resignation. Why it is kept secret. Isolation far from markets, far from cameras, preserves forms that otherwise morph into entertainment. The vow of solitude is a preservative, like salt for fish, like cold for ice. Without it, teachings spoil. Silence. Act 10. The monastic voice. A quiet interview. There are voices in the monasteries who will say little. They will not translate their whole life into sound. That reticence is part of the practice. An elder, speaking off record, once said, "It is said that to use heat to impress is to lose it. Knowledge has weight. Once you use it for vanity, it leaves." This is not an invented moral, it is an observation. Another said, "The syllables are alive. Do not write their names on public walls. A name shouted into a storm is a lost name. Keep it within a cup. Drink, do not spill." I have asked questions for which I was not answered. I say this plainly to avoid the pretense of omniscience. The unanswered becomes the shape that guides the next winter. Act 11. The return to the room. Reflection and query. Come back now to the chair where you began. Notice again the temperature, the thermostat, the fabric, the small machinery of comfort, the skin where the world touches you. Ask a quiet question. If the power went out tonight, who would you be? A victim, a master, or a student with a candle willing to learn? None of these answers are final. The question is a practice. It is said, you are not simply a body that needs heat. You are a being that remembers how to be. You carry bellows if you remember to use them. Act 12. The non-conclusion, the great void, and the left door. The final act must refuse finality. The great void is a state not owned by language. It is said that at its edge the only sound is the silence of a well-tended fire. We must not finish the story because the practice does not finish. It returns. It asks again. Some questions remain unanswered. How far can physiology go? Which aspects are cultural and which mechanistic? When a tradition says, do not tell, what is protective and what is gatekeeping? Only a few learn the answers to those questions. This is not an omission. It is a boundary, a door left slightly ajar for those who will live the years it takes to pass through it. Silence. Epilogue, a final litany. Listen. You carry a lamp. You also carry a thermostat. Both are true. The last image we leave with is thin and precise. A small coal at the navel, a golden lotus, Dorji Nalyorma, standing like a question, a wet sheet steaming on ice. A paper made by hand, ink ground by thumb and thumb again, a hut with its window angled to catch the dawn. These images repeat. Repeat after me in the silence. I will not rush. I will not dazzle. I will return. I will be careful. Only a few learn, and yet the task remains. Silence. The marks of a ritual are in the pauses. The marks of a lineage are in the secrets kept to preserve life. The marks of a human heart are in the choice to risk comfort for capacity. Until the next winter, step outside. Bare your wrists. Breathe. Listen. Let the cold speak. Breathe. Silence.